channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet Union. Hello comrades, and welcome back to the Ushanka Show. Today I would like to kind of step back again and put on the back burner the topic of the Soviet retail and talk again about my family and our life in Kiev. If you watched my previous videos on this topic, we moved out of the dorm rooms which we shared with other family. It happened when I was about 5 years old, so approximately 1976. And we moved in our own little apartment. Well, it wasn't really ours. As I was telling before, my mom begged to get this apartment. And it was still government-owned apartment, but we had the right to live there. And those apartments were really tiny. That type was called Gostinka. So it's like a extended stay type of apartment. So there was pretty small, tiny kitchen, really small bathroom. It's like a so-called combined bathroom. So you have a toilet, a little sink, and a bathtub in the same room. For Soviet people, the best way was separate bathrooms. So they have a little tiny room where the toilet is, and then you have a little bit bigger room where the bathroom is. So of course, after sharing the same room with another family, having your own even tiny apartment was an amazing thing. So of course we enjoyed it, and I attended kindergarten. We already talked about that story. So my mom would walk me every morning to the kindergarten, drops me off, and then she goes to work. When I started the school at the age of 7, so that was 1978, September of 1978, only first day my dad took me to school. It was about 10 minutes walk from our apartment building. And then every other day since then I was always walking by myself to school. So it's kind of different comparing what we have going on here in America. People don't just let 7-year-old kids walk to school and walk back from school. There, as I said, I'll go to school. After end of school, I'll walk back to my apartment building. I have a key on my neck, and that'll be a key for the door. I unlock the door, have some lunch, and then do homework and play with my friends. So at that time, my father worked at the Antonov airplane factory in Kiev, of course, and they were manufacturing kind of neat-looking airplanes. Original was a AN-2 Anushka, the biplane, and actually they were manufacturing them for quite a long time, but they quit making them around 1961 or 62, and they transferred production to Poland, and then they started making bigger real plane like AN-24, AN-12, and others. So my dad worked there, and he worked as a spray painter. So that's pretty not a good job for your health. So he was getting paid more than normal workers. So I think his salary was around 180 rubles per month. And my mom was working at the design factory. Was manufacturing concrete panels for construction. It was a very popular way of building cheap housing. The panels will be pre-made at the factory, so they'll have a window opening and already window installed. So they make those panels and then they assemble them like Legos right at the site. So everything was going pretty well. My mom was probably making about 110 rubles a month. So together they were around 250 or something like that, close to 300 rubles a month. But the problem was that that apartment was still too small, and so they had little kid me. So my mom started looking at opportunities to get a real apartment, like 2 rooms at least, and I'm talking not 2 bedrooms, just 2 rooms. Unfortunately, either factories had extremely long waiting list. So usually in Soviet Union, you get a job, and then each factory will have a waiting list for cars and then a waiting list for apartments. And my dad's place, there was a lot. They had a lot of workers, but not a lot of housing distributed. Let's say they build a house and then they say, okay, 10 apartments go to this factory, 5 apartments go to that factory. So that was about 20 years waiting list at my dad's factory, and about 15 to 20 years waiting list at my mom's factory. So it's a long wait. You'll get it for free, but you have to wait close to 20 years. So that's a long time, right? But there was one more option to get apartment without waiting. Apparently, I found out, I didn't know about it, but already in 1958, the Soviet government, facing with such a horrible shortage of housing and shortage of funds to build housing, they permitted so-called construction cooperatives. So like here in America, you have some cooperatives, they co-ops, they work together. Like if you buy cranberries, it's that ocean fresh or whatever it's called, it's like a cooperative. So they permitted, people can get together and create construction cooperative. They can pool money and hire a construction company to build the apartment building. But now we're talking about real market and real market pricing. 1 square meter, the cost to build was close to 160 rubles. So prices were quite high. For 1-room apartment, it will cost about 5,000 rubles. To build 2-room apartment, 7,000 to 8,000 rubles. And 3-room apartment was around 12,000 rubles. The way the loans were going, so for example, my mom decided to go for 3-room apartment right away. So they needed 12,000 rubles total cost. 30% was required down payment. So in this case, it's 4,000 rubles. And then the rest you pay in 15 years. And the interest was about 0.5%. So there was a really reasonable interest. Actually, people could always deposit money in a bank, in a government bank, Sberbank, and usually the bank paid 3%. But you can get the loan for 0.5%. So for my parents, it would be like close to 50 rubles a month to pay for next 15 years. So my mother, they were desperate. Or you have to wait for 20 years to get free apartment, or you have to cough up this giant chunk of cash. So I said my parents were making about 250 or so a month together. So 4,000 rubles, it's close to like 2 years of family income. So if we say average American family maybe makes together 80,000 or 50,000, so you have to do down payment like $100,000 to get 3-room apartment. It's just a down payment, and then you need to pay for the rest of next 15 years $50 or 50 rubles a month. So that was a big chunk of cash. And of course, we were a young family, young kid, so they didn't have a lot of savings. So my mother talked to her father, my grandpa Sergey, and he had 3,000 rubles saved up. And he agreed, I'll help you. Pretty much the agreement was, if you will take care of us when we get old, in a week, it's fine, we'll help you to purchase this apartment. So my mom provided with 3,000 rubles, and we still were shy 1,000 rubles. And since my dad's family on his dad's side was a huge family. He had 9 brothers and sisters. So my mom said, well, go to the village, talk to your parents, talk to all your brothers and sisters, and, ask that we need to borrow 1,000 rubles. So maybe, you have so many relatives, if everyone gives, 50 rubles, 100 rubles, as long as you get together 1,000 rubles will be good. So my father went to the village, stayed there for a week. He came back with 0. Not a single relative gave him anything. That was such a huge disappointment. They just, for whatever reason, my dad didn't know how to ask. So we kind of like already signed the papers, and we were still shy of 1,000 rubles, which we didn't have. But the miracle happened. My father was complaining at work to one of his friends about this dire situation, like we have this opportunity to get this apartment, and all I need is 1,000 rubles and I can't get it. My relatives refuse to help me. So one of his co-workers said, well, let me talk to my mom. So he talked to his mother, who also lived out in the country, and they agreed to loan him 1,000 rubles. No interest, just to help the guy out. So relatives didn't help, but this random guy at work trusted my parents and loaned them 1,000 rubles. So we barely missed, we almost missed this opportunity to get this apartment. It was very close, but fortunately it worked out. My parents put the down payment, and construction started somewhere around 1980. And I believe like in 1981, so I was in the 3rd grade, and that's when we started getting ready to move from our area. We lived in so-called Chokolovka. It's like more older area of Kiev, closer to downtown. And the new area was in outskirts, Yuzhnaya Barshigovka area, and that was used to be villages, and they just moved people out, flattened the earth, and started building hundreds of tall 9-story high or 16-story high apartments, and one of those apartment buildings was ours. And so 1981, it's when we finally were ready to move. Another interesting detail, so when my parents were considering between 2-room apartment or 3-room apartment, and it was a huge difference, about 4,000 rubles, there was actually a limit. The government didn't let you buy more than 1 room per person. So our family had 3 people, so the max we could get was 3 rooms. Like, even if we had money, government wouldn't allow you to buy more than 3-room apartment because of this kind of law. So instantly, on my dad's side, all those relatives were telling him, like, don't be stupid, don't waste money. Why do you need 3-room apartment? Get yourself just 2-room apartment. But my mom was, she ran the house, and so she put her foot down and said, like, we can get 3 rooms, let's get 3 rooms. So we'll have 2 bedrooms and 1 living room, so we don't need to, sleep in the living room. So she prevailed, and they put money down on a 3-room apartment. So basically, 3,000 rubles was we didn't have to give it back. It was my grandparents. Slowly, my parents paid back that 1,000 ruble loan from the friend, and then for next 15 years, so from 1981 till 1996, we had to pay 50 rubles every month. And here in America, if bank, when they're looking at your mortgage options, they don't want you to have a payment higher than 30% of your annual income, monthly income. So if you think my parents were making about 250 rubles, so that was about a fifth, 50 rubles every month. But there was a lot of money, of course, to pay every month, so they were stretched for a long time. Now, a couple little details about living in apartments in Kiev and other cities. The only meter that we had was electricity, electric meter. So this kind of I grew up from being a little kid. My mom was always making me to turning lights off. because we had to pay for electricity. Now water, natural gas, and heat, we had no meters. It was just the cost was estimated based on how many people live in an apartment. So for example, you can burn natural gas in your stove day and night, and that'll be the same price. And you can run hot water, take a bath every hour, you pay the same price. And the heat, the way, of course, we didn't have air conditioning, it was unheard of. I never seen air conditionings in Soviet Union. So in the summer, you just open windows. That's how you get, your apartment cooled off. In the winter, we had a hot water, those batteries, and the way the whole system was designed was pretty wasteful. They have a central boiler that covers like the whole area, maybe, 50 buildings or 100 buildings. So there's big heating oil or coal boiler that heats up the water, and they pump this water in the underground lines, and that's hot water that goes into the heat. And also the water was supplied separately too from the same boiler, so we'll have a hot water and a cold water. We didn't have electric heaters, we never heated our own water. So you can imagine there was quite a lot of loss of heat by the time the water gets to your building underground on those pipes. And in the winter you could see quite clearly where those pipes are, because snow there'll be no snow, it will be melted right above where the water lines are. So as I said, we always were, we didn't have extra money in our family, so we grew up like, watching every cent or every kopeck, but we never bothered about saving water or gas in the kitchen because there was no limit. So it took a while for me when I moved to America to start turning water off. For example, if I'll brush my teeth back home, it's just you turn the water on and you just brush your teeth and water is running, you don't care. Here, after a while, it's like, wait a minute, I have a water meter. This is wasting money. I need to turn the water off. So now, of course, they started putting meters. So everyone has a water meter and gas meter. But that time, was no meters. The government decided it's just too expensive to put the meters. It's just cheaper and easier to just average for everyone how much does it cost, because when it belongs to the government, it belongs to nobody, so nobody cares. So I was about halfway through my third grade. So that was 19th, because I went to school, started school 1978, so second grade 79, third grade 1980. So middle of 1980, so I was halfway through school when my parents moved, and I ended up I was finishing my old school, so I had to travel all the way from our new apartment, so that will be about an hour one way, switching buses. So that was quite painful experience, but I was so excited because I had my own room. And actually my mother, she allowed me to pick the room, and I picked the smallest room because it was cozy and small. So yeah, that was a most exciting experience, moving out of little apartment, one room apartment, into the huge 3-room apartment, and I had my own room. And when we moved, I still remember that day. As I said, my memories is funky. I don't remember what happened 2 weeks ago, but I still remember really well these events that happened 40 years ago. Of course, I'm not sure if they had moving companies, but you just need to know people. So my father knew some guy who was a bus driver, just a bus like takes people around. So I don't know, was that some favors exchange or money, but we used the passenger bus, to move our stuff from our old apartment to new apartment. And I remember that day where I'm on this bus, it's empty bus, just full of our stuff, furniture, plants, bags, mattresses, and we are riding in the bus, but we don't stop at the bus stops, and you could see people upset faces in every bus stop because they see the bus approaching, they think it is their ride, and it just rides right by it without stopping. So that's how we moved, using just a public transportation bus. So that's how people were, dealing with all this kind of shortages of things or services. And my parents made a huge mistake. What happened after we moved out, my mother just called Jack. It's like this local, I won't say company, but just organization, government organization that in charge of all these apartments. And they're like, hey, we got a new apartment, so we're moving out. So we are giving you back the apartment you give us. And he said, lady sounded super surprised, excited, like, oh, really? Okay, sounds great. What mistake was that there was the way to keep the old apartment and to get a new apartment. Because by law, you can't keep two apartments, one family. What needed to be done, it's what a lot of people did. You bring one of your parents from the country, from the village, and you assign them to the same apartment. If you remember, I have a video about it, that Soviet people had propiska. So you needed permission to live in apartment or in city. So my mom could bring my father, for example, my grandfather, and make him a propiska, so he also will be assigned to this apartment. And that way we have technically two families in the same apartment, which was okay. And then we could move out and keep that other little apartment, that one room apartment, for ourselves, for whatever reasons, because we had my grandfather assigned to that. But no one told my mom this thing, and she's so every time I mention that, she's getting really upset. She's like, I can't believe no one advised me this, because we lost a perfect nice little apartment. We just gave it back, and because we could keep it. And actually I just looked it up, and there's apartments for sale in the same building I used to live on Molodogvardeyskaya Street, and it's about $25,000 the price right now. So if we would keep that apartment right now, they could be renting it for about, I don't know, $400 a month, which is great income. Or you can just sell it and make $20,000, not rubles, dollars. But my parents, since they were naive and didn't know any better, they just gave it back to the government. That's how we lost our one-room apartment. So this is my story about how my family moved finally. And I said, we lived there, I was about from 5 till third grade, it'll be 10. So about 5 to 6 years we lived in a little tiny apartment. And I said, the only way we were able to move out is to find this huge chunk of money and get in debt, just like American people, just get in big debt, big mortgage for the next 15 years with the big payment. But we got a really nice conditions. We got an apartment on the second floor, so that was not too high, not too low. You don't want to have apartment on the first floor, because people can look at your windows and it's easy to climb if somebody trying to steal your stuff. Second floor is nice height, and it's not too high. So for example, if the elevator breaks down, which they broke down quite often, it's a second floor. You just walk right up there. So we had a really great location. And I'm gonna jump a little bit ahead of my story. So as I said, our 15-year mortgage was up in 1996. And what happened when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine became independent and they had their own money, so-called coupons. There was a temporarily Ukrainian currency. And we started just insane, crazy inflation. We're talking like thousands of percents a year, like 10,000% a year. So around 1993, we still had a long stretch to go and quite a bit of money to pay. But because of inflation, it was getting like ridiculously cheap. And the lady who was in charge of billing, one day she told us, she said, hey, I just found out that they're planning to recalculate the balances, to include inflation. So if you have money right now, you can pay it off your apartment and be done. Otherwise, they're gonna recalculate, and then it's gonna jump and be a huge amount again. So you have another those 3 years of payments to do. So at that time, it was pretty much one monthly salary, like $20. So I had the money, so I gave my parents this $20. They exchanged it to the local currency, paid that balance. So in the end of this deal, that inflation's helped us greatly because we shaved off like 5 years of our debt and tons of money for that apartment. And right now, that 3-room apartment, it's about $120,000 if you want to buy something like that. So that's the only thing my parents saved from the Soviet Union times is apartment, because they lost all their money that they had in savings, which was about 4,000 rubles. It's all got disappeared, eaten up by inflation. But the only thing that they earned and kept was this 3-room apartment. So this is my story about the housing situation in the Soviet Union and how my family ended up getting a huge debt. Even being in Soviet Union, we got big mortgage, but we lived in a good conditions since 1981. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please share my video. Don't forget to put like, and I always appreciate your support. If you can sign up on patreon.com and help me to develop this channel. Thank you. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.